Now picture a fancy high-tech office with a safe full of hallucinogenic mushrooms, LSD. No, it's not a joke here. They're conducting clinical trials, potentially, testing treatments for depression, using ketamine or components of the drug commonly known as ecstasy. Well, after sparking the cannabis revolution, Israeli biotech companies are now experimenting with psychedelic substances, especially given the forecast for the field, a $10 billion global market in the next 5 years. And with over 100,000 licensed cannabis patients already across Israel, these other substances classified under the quote-unquote dangerous drugs category in the country are now being looked at under a new light. And along those lines, we're joined by Saul Kaye, the founder of Psych-ed, HiPharm group, and now known as the Psychedelic Pharmacist. Saul, we've crossed paths in some of your previous endeavors around the cannabis industry here, so thanks for joining me on the show today. We've experienced a revolution in this country, especially with cannabis in the last 10, 20 years. Is it now psychedelic drugs that are going to be increasingly used to help patients, even with chronic illnesses?
Absolutely. What we're seeing is through medicalization, we eventually get to legalization. We're also seeing a mental health crisis where the tools that we have as therapists, psychiatrists, pharmacists aren't meeting the medical need with the onslaught of mental health crisis that's happening, addiction, suicidality, depression, non-treatable depression. And psychedelics offer a rapid way to do a tikkun on some of those conditions. And we have some legal psychedelics on market today, like ketamine, that have no stumble or roadblocks at the Ministry of Health level and can be used in therapy today. And that's really exciting.
You mentioned the stumbling blocks, the hurdles in place. I mean, the U.S. is a good example of that, unfortunately, the huge federal roadblocks in place. Israel, and unlike the U.S., I want to say, there's been top-down support for the changes that we've seen in the last decade or two. How critical is that for in this country that we're seeing, government agencies essentially stand behind this kind of research?
Incredibly important, and the agency in Misrad Abriut, in the health ministry, that handles all cannabis is now handling all entheogens, all psychedelics. So there are going to be licenses to grow medicinal mushrooms, and there will be research licenses granted for trials with LSD and MDMA. And there's a current trial in Israel on MDMA in 150 patients over 7 different sites. So we've always been good at allowing the research. We've stumbled a little bit, even with cannabis, in actually allowing all the patients that need that help right now to get that help. And once again, ketamine therefore offers an immediate response because it is a licensed drug in the supply chain and it's already here. We just need a small shift in doctors to start prescribing it for psychiatry. And we're in the psychedelics treatment game, and that's revolutionary.
And in terms of Israel, I want to come back to that about the unique environment it is here. Is the country positioned to be a leader in this now new emerging realm, given the prominence with cannabis already here?
It can be. I think we need Kupat Cholim, we need the HMOs on board, because without that, it's an out-of-pocket expense and experience that not everyone who needs it can afford. So we need a framework within the HMOs that support this. And it's very clear that this sort of therapy is going to reduce the cost to those HMOs over the lifetime of a depressed patient, where we can use one of these revolutionary treatments and treat them in maybe 6 treatments with ketamine and reverse that lifelong depression. So there's a clear economic benefit to do it. We have to convince the right people that needs to be done.
Now, MDMA, ketamine's come up a lot in this conversation. Psilocybin, you mentioned growing these medicinal mushrooms coming out. I understand that they're likely to be used to treat maladies such as post-traumatic stress disorder, the mental issues that people are facing here. Are you highly optimistic? Are those where your mind is at? Are you looking at these sort of known substances already?
There hasn't been a development in psychiatry that's going to be as big as psychedelics will be since maybe Prozac, the very, very first SSRI antidepressant. Looks like nation. You can see how powerful that was as a technology. this is the next generation of therapy, and everyone suffers from trauma, and trauma is the root cause of any bodily disease that you might have at the end of the day. If you follow the latest science with, people that are talking about how the body keeps the score, and ultimately you can trace everything back to trauma, and we have a set of tools that allow us to access those trauma centers in our brain and rewire them. And they're now becoming both popular, and everywhere is talking about how do we integrate this in therapy. And then the next step is how do we give these to well people, and how do we lift society up across the board. But right now we have a tool that we can use in therapy, and Israel has the highest rate of PTSD in the world. We live in a very stressful society here. And so bringing a tool like that, and possibly one of the reasons why cannabis was so accelerated here is because we have such a high rate of PTSD without a dramatic answer from the current medical toolbox that psychiatrists and doctors use.
Well, Saul Kaye, the Psychedelic Pharmacist, good to see you at the cutting edge of this emerging field as well. We'll be in touch, see where this goes. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.